Hello, everyone. In this video, I'm going to be talking about career development in the college years or in the university setting. So this can mean so many different things. I think the best place to start at is this: just there's the context of American universities at this time are very diverse, and diversity in a lot of different ways. So often when we think of diversity, we think of diversity of ethnicity, gender. Uh, Disability status, faith, spirituality, sexual orientation, etc. That these social identities form diversity, which is absolutely true on university camps. It's often a time of, diverse groups coming together to make sense of this university and learning experience. But in a more foundational way, diversity and thinking about just culture as foundational ways of being and ways of viewing the world, key influences of kind of who we are at a key social level. That there's a diversity of ideologies and philosophies of life that are really coming alive during the university years, whether that's traditional age, like right out of high school, or even later on non-traditional, a bit later in life, because often college is a time for more intentionality of and deeper levels of reflection and thought of who am I, where's my place in the world. Like, sure, to various degrees, different academic programs highlight that, but it is often, at least at a base core level, there. And like the cognitive development is continuously being developed during those years, which kind of sponsor or kind of sparks this deeper level of thought. So to me, that's important to recognize in this, in these of what types of students are engaging in these career development processes. And there's a lot of key, developmental tasks that are being faced, whether once again that's right out of high school or later in life. There's usually a shift towards more self-reliance, independence, but also navigating relationships and trying to kind of find a sense of interdependence in relationships. And Tang in the text, chapter 12 of the Tang text, kind of talks about that on pages 308 to 309 of these developmental needs of traditional students as well as non-traditional students. Uh, so yeah, for traditional students, there's often that shift from, you know, family being the center to, okay, moving towards self-sufficiency. Sure, that doesn't mean that I'm abandoning family, but it's like kind of finding myself in a new social group and in a new social, setting. But also for non-traditional students, I really wanted to highlight this. Tang states that for non-traditional age college students, seeking independence might not be the primary concern. Balancing work and school or family and school or even more demands from other roles than students could present different sources of worries. So there's a lot of different tasks that are merging uh, during the university experience. So these diverse lived experiences are brought to the university campus by all students. So with that being said, there's diverse career needs and motivations. So for example, on page 305 from the Tang text, Tang described a few different, just brief snapshots of different, like I think they're kind of they're fictitious, but I think they're drawn from various. I believe they're fictitious at least, but they're drawn kind of from lived experiences, I imagine. But it states that Victoria is a senior in a criminal justice studies program at a public four-year institution and wants to work for the FBI, her dream job. However, she just received a medical diagnosis that would prevent her from being a field agent for the FBI. Gilliam and Tang state, then how would you help Victoria? So sometimes there's these key changes that kind of close certain career doors and life pathways that were anticipated but no longer work. So that can be a huge career development process of like reimagining a life and a life process when it was already envisioned for decades potentially before. Another scenario of a career development experience for a college student is Joe has always wanted to be a doctor. He is at the end of his freshman year and is failing all his science courses. I've experienced that a lot as a career counselor, seeing that students in this situation. Continuing on, Joe has realized he does not want to be a doctor. In fact, he never wanted to be a doctor. He just did not want to let his parents down. How would you help Joe? then the last scenario that they bring up, Scott, a police officer, shot and killed someone in the line of duty and suffers from severe post-traumatic stress disorder. He is attending college to earn a degree in something where he can still help people, but his PTSD diagnosis restricts his ability to work alone with people. How would you help Scott? So I'm not going to present like specifics of that, but I think it just kind of depicts a few different examples briefly of like, okay, the uniqueness of each individual, but the story, the history of the person that they bring to the university campus is really important. That impacts their motivations, like I stated, kind of their motivations for why they're there and kind of how they'll persevere. Also, another piece that I really appreciated about and thinking, so Tang starts to talk about the historical context of kind of how the college and university experiences shifted throughout time. And Tang talks about how, moving into the 21st century, younger generations of students want to find meaning from their work experiences. Additionally, students want to find jobs in organizations where they feel they belong. So we can start to see this shift towards more of like a holistic approach of like wanting to not just have life and careers like so perfectly separated and just delineated. And I thought Tang really described it well, talking about total development on page 315. So the career development process for university in the university setting often emphasizes the total development of students. And just briefly, I worked with a student as a career counseling student, who was facing depression, suicidal ideation, and was coming to seek career development, kind of to find career as well as life direction. And we couldn't separate the suicidal ideation, the depressive symptoms from the career and life, planning process, because they're all interconnected. The total development was there, as well as these barriers, these significant mental health barriers to that process. We regularly explored his inner experience of his identity development, but also his symptoms and how his depression and his thought processes played into that identity development and the challenges. We had to regularly assess for suicide. Spirituality and his faith was also really central. It was a protective factor against the suicidal, ideation, but it was also essential to finding hope in his life and in his career. So once again, total development. I think that's a key piece from Tang that I really appreciated and that I've really experienced, is that the career development process isn't, I think I've been saying these in so many of my videos, but that it's about the whole person and how they're creating a life that's meaningful, and how work fits into that in a meaningful way. And there's an intervention and a prevention piece to this that Tang describes. That career development can be an intervention, like I just described in this scenario above, of like, okay, the student's coming with these presenting concerns in this career development process that we need to intervene to support the student. But prevention can also be really important too. We don't have to wait for students to kind of be in this difficult place and kind of seek out services. So we don't have to be reactive. The preventative approach, like for my experience working in career development at a university setting, is we reached out to students at new student orientation to help them understand the career development support that they had on campus, as well as that it can be a bigger life process and a life meaning process. We also, worked at veterans orientations. Like a lot of non-traditional students were in veterans orientations. We collaborated with the first year seminar folks on campus, the English department, partnerships with athletics, to have this preventative approach to where we could say, let's come to you and try to prevent, these career development challenges from like kind of sparking the process earlier, so that the reflection can occur before the crisis of the career development pathway. So once again, there's that difference between intervention, a reactive approach, and a prevention approach, a preparatory process. Just a couple other thoughts before I wrap up this video, that the university timeline is often a time for reality testing. So meaning it's time to put possibilities into action. And it doesn't mean that I have to do a whole degree program to be reality testing. Ting talked about how, some examples of reality testing from my perspective, how I've made sense of it, is like experiential learning, experiences such as like job shadowing, occupational interviews, networking events and experiences, internships, that a lot of these are built into the university setting to help students not just think they know what they want to do, but experience what they want to do, especially before they've done their entire program. So they're really ready for that reality testing of like, okay, that we've been thinking and maybe being, you know, being supported to think about this, but it's time to act, which can be a powerful as well as challenging experience. Uh, the last thing I wanted to cover, and I've addressed this a little bit, but Tang talked about cultural considerations related to disability, that navigating disability at the university settings are really important and really important for the career development process. So the student example that I just talked about with the students struggling with depression and suicidal ideation, like, yeah, in our work in career development, we would address that together as well. But at times it started to be like, okay, the mental health symptoms were central rather than the career development process. So then we partnered with the counseling center, so the student could work specifically on those issues, kind of separated from the career development process. Like I said, the total development was there, but I just gave him the option of saying, you know, if you really want to hone in on these specifically, and it's like you're feeling like less of like a career development concern at this point, the counseling center can be really important and helpful to you. And he's like, yeah, I think I want to seek that out too. So it was like a partnership between the career counseling as well as the mental health counseling folks on campus. Uh, and disability support services can be really important as well to kind of help with accommodations to help students on their academic and career pathway. I also talked about, you know, athletics. That's, you know, student athletes. It's a unique culture in athletics, a unique kind of norms and values and experiences. Uh, so it's a group identity that to me was often seen as like performers, or performers isn't necessarily the right term, but like kind of valued for their athletic performance rather than their academic performance. Sometimes the athletics would outweigh the importance of academics. And once again, that wasn't necessarily what administration in athletics was stating, but sometimes the lived experience of the student athlete was more of an athlete student, not student first. But one thing that I would do, and I'd do these prevention groups on campus or for the athletics department, would be to talk about life after sports. And a lot of students, especially those in high profile sports where, you know, professional contracts were a reality of like football and basketball type programs, is a lot of we're just like saying academics doesn't really matter. Someone just literally said that, like, I don't really care about school because I'm going to go pro. Uh, and my approach to that was like, okay, you go pro. Say you go pro for 5 or 10 years. Okay, so you're 30 and done with professional, you know, athletics. Now what? You could live for like easily, you know, 50, 60, 70 years. What are you going to do and make of your life? You know, so it's almost like a yes and. Yes, like I hope you go pro if that's what you want. And how else are you going to occupy your life after that? So, and a lot of times to even get to the point of having those conversations, though, we had to partner with the administrators of athletics. It wasn't like we could just walk in those meetings and those groups, but we had to have conversations with the administration to really kind of get buy-in from the administrators so that we could enter that culture of athletics. So, anyways, just a few thoughts of these cultural subgroups that are part of the university setting. Those are just two examples, lots more, but important to kind of align and partner and build relationships with other administrators so we can access and have audience to students to help them in the career development process. So, anyways, those are just a few thoughts. So happy to hear any questions or comments.